Well, government officials here in Washington are trying to figure out what to do with millions of empty homes. It's a problem cities across the country are facing. Some of them are vacation homes, others waiting to be rented or sold, but many of them are not even on the market. It's the aftermath of a bleak housing market. Here's a look at just how many of these homes are vacant. 9.9 million homes have been foreclosed upon since 2008. And as of 2011, there were about 14.3 million year-round vacant housing units in the U.S. Vacant properties have increased by 43.8% nationwide since 2000. So what exactly should we do with these empty homes? Elizabeth Duke, a Federal Reserve Board governor, is posing this question. She says it will cost money to tear them down or convert them, but would doing nothing be even more devastating to the economy? To discuss, I'm joined now by John Taylor, President and CEO of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, and from our New York studio, Anthony Randazzo, Director of Economic Research at the Reason Foundation. Welcome, gentlemen. So, John, I'll start off with you. What do you think we should do with these empty homes?
Well, we actually absolutely need to do something with them. I mean, we have a homeless problem. We have the highest rents in the country now that we've had in many years. We have a lot of people who could be qualified homeowners who could buy these properties if they were renovated, brought up to speed. The idea of plowing under perfectly good homes or near perfectly good homes just is an awful concept. It makes absolutely no sense. But it is the untapped, unfinished problem of this housing crisis. With foreclosures, new data is out today, very good news for the president, for the economy. Lowest levels of foreclosure filing since July of 2007. But this 14 million plus vacant and abandoned homes is absolutely the thing we need to deal with next. But I'd look at it as an opportunity, not just as a problem.
All right, Anthony, what do you think? Is this an opportunity to jump in and do something with these millions of empty homes?
Well, I don't think that there's something that the federal government should be doing with these homes. As a matter of fact, I think the biggest thing we can do is we can pull back policies both in the Treasury Department with how they're running Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, as well as the Federal Reserve's policies, which are sort of propping up housing prices, so that we can actually lower housing prices in this country. Everybody seems to want housing prices to go up as if somehow that makes them more affordable. What makes a product more affordable is if you have lower price. And so one of the reasons why you have all these vacant homes that aren't even on the market, creating this illusion that we have a low amount of available housing and we should be building more homes, is because housing prices have been propped up from where they really should be falling to. And we're not out of the housing bubble yet. I know it's several years since the housing bubble started to collapse, but we're still at inflated housing prices. So one way to get these homes out of sort of their vacancy status and into the hands of people like John was just talking about, of people who want to own these homes, is to pull back federal policies that are propping up prices so that these homes can actually be affordable.
So, Anthony, it sounds like you're talking about the private sector jumping in and this kind of being able to remedy itself. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I think it definitely can be able to remedy itself if there's no longer an expectation that prices are going to go up dramatically. Why would a home not be put on the market? Because the owner thinks that, oh, if I just wait 6 months, a year or two, the housing market is going to get better.
But Anthony, we're talking about millions of homes, 14 million homes, and some of these, I went and covered a story in Detroit a few months ago, these neighborhoods completely devastated, abandoned homes. Do you really think that these neighborhoods can recover on their own?
I think it's certainly the case for most of them. Now, there certainly are going to be neighborhoods where there's no homes that are being occupied, and so you want to that's going to be a little bit of a different neighborhood. In Detroit, absolutely, it's my hometown. There are neighborhoods where every home, not only is it vacant, but it needs a lot to be put into it. And I think the people to carry those costs are the people who invested them in the first place. They're the ones that made the bad investment. They're the ones that sort of reap the costs. If they're going to walk away from that, and then it's put onto the city, then if there is a role for government, it's only then when the owner completely walks away from it, wipes their hand of it, they're going to get nothing back. Could something be done? And then in that case,
I think John is holding back here.
Anthony, I just want to say, it's that same free market and that same investment community that got us into this mess to begin with. Creating, these these Bernie Madoff kind of schemes in which all sorts of investment money was used to buy mortgage-backed securities that were just bad loans, that were unsustainable, that were made by brokers and lenders just for the purposes of getting their fees. It didn't matter to them whether the homeowner paid it back, because they're all being sold to Wall Street, and everybody in between except the investor and the homeowner was making money. So, and listen, by the way, Fannie and Freddie are in fact selling a lot of these homes, and guess who's right in there buying all these properties? And that's that same investment community you're talking about. So what you're saying is in fact happening, and happening increasingly on a big scale. The question is, are they going to make these homes? Are they going to simply sit on these homes until the market turns around, and then 2-3 years later flip them so that they're making double-digit returns on an investment? Or are they going to rehab these properties and really help stabilize neighborhoods and create decent, affordable, sustainable housing that's going to make a difference in the Detroits of the world and elsewhere? I mean, I think what we need is a sensible mixture of the private sector, the government, working with local mayors and cities and towns, and making sure that there's jobs created. I mean, think of the opportunity with 14 million homes. If we began to train people and hire people to become carpenters, plumbers, electricians, sheet metal workers, roofers, whatever, to reclaim these properties and rebuild them, we're talking about having a tremendous job development program while we're reclaiming these properties, bringing them back on the market, and they'd be on the market like any other property, competing for prices and rents, and so that's really a good thing for this country, for that to happen.
Well, and John, without sort of like getting into a whole debate over the financial crisis, one thing I'd point out is that we actually used this same language back in the 80s and 90s about sort of a healthy mixture of the private sector and government planning to try and create jobs and create more home ownership. And what we got was Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And what they do is they collaborate with Wall Street in many of the ways that you're complaining about. The Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac programs right now of selling homes to investment banks is a terrible idea. So, neither one of us supports that idea.
So Anthony, we must have lived in different countries, because my recollection of what happened, and I was right in the middle of observing all this, perhaps like you, was that Fannie and Freddie actually lost tremendous market share to the subprime market, which was selling to Wall Street. They went from being $2.7 trillion agencies, assets under management on securitized portfolio, to 1.7. They lost $1 trillion in 3 years to the private sector market. So you're not talking about getting rid of the market, or you're not talking about holding the market accountable, or you're actually saying, oh, bring those guys back and let them now buy the properties that have been devastated by bad policies. Look, I agree with you. Oversight of Fannie and Freddie, accountability, absolutely a necessary thing. But let's not give this broad brush free pass to the private sector market as if they didn't play a role, or they don't have a rule of law that also needs to apply to them.
Of course not, John. I wouldn't give a pass to Wall Street whatsoever. They made a lot of mistakes, and I wouldn't give a pass to the regulators, who I think also made a lot of mistakes. I think both sides. I think we probably agree both sides are in a huge mess. Part of the whole mess that we got into. The question is right now, in terms of dealing with these homes, is the answer to go back to another similar program that could create a whole bunch more of these sort of unintended consequences, or is the answer for those homes to go to families that can afford them at prices that they can afford, which would be lowering than they are right now, and have them develop those those homes.
No, you're right. You're right.
But
I don't think anything but that is on the table. I think we now have a Consumer Protection Agency. The United States of America did not have a Consumer Financial Protection Agency. So a lot of these things happened without anybody having any oversight to ensure that bad things were reined in. So we now have that. Let me just say, we also have Dodd-Frank. For all the criticism of Dodd-Frank, what Dodd-Frank also has in it is it prohibits these unsavory, unsustainable lending practices, including making a loan to someone who doesn't have the ability to pay. So whatever you think of Dodd-Frank, there's stuff in there, including the Consumer Agency, that's going to ensure that that sort of thing that you were just talking about is not going to occur in the future. And I agree with you, working with the private sector, but they're not going to do things in a way other than to maximize profit, which may be just to be a slum landlord for 2-3 years, flip the property down the road when the housing market comes back. And we just need more thoughtful, purposeful engagement by the private sector, and that's not going to happen if you just say let the free market be free to abuse, free to only think about one thing, and that's profit for their investors.
I want to bring up another point here, because as these homes, millions of them, stand vacant, there's a lot of other consequences. I mean, these neighborhoods, I saw, of course, to use Detroit as another example, and Detroit is just one of many cities suffering from this. Cities plagued by foreclosure, vacant homes. These are areas where property values also suffer, and also you see a higher crime rate. So can you talk about that, how there's other consequences of this?
And the biggest consequence of all, and I think Anthony would probably agree with me, is as these properties continue, as we see more foreclosures, as the properties continue to deteriorate, because they're not just sitting there. People going in, they're trashing them, they're taking value out of them through taking the copper and appliances and other things, so that those properties continue to worsen. What happens to people who, most Americans, 88% of all Americans who are paying on their mortgages and have prime loans, is their value of their property, their equity is being lost in the process. So we have to stop the bleeding. And until we deal with these vacant and abandoned properties and the foreclosures, we're not going to stop the bleeding. It's good for everybody, for us to be able to create sustainable, occupied, healthy homes.
All right, we have just 1 minute left. So
Sure.
Anthony, go ahead there.
Well, with trying to get back to all that, one thing I think we should make sure that we are completely aware of is things like Dodd-Frank are keeping the prices of homes too high. They're constricting credit, and they're keeping the prices of homes too high. And we don't need to have a society that is all homeowners. We can have societies where some people rent and some people own homes. And John, please, to have public policies that focus on just trying to make sure everybody is a homeowner is to put us right back in the mentality, both private and public sector, what got us into this mess in the first place.
I hear the libertarian argument, but let me say this. The only thing constricting credit right now is the fact that investors don't want to invest in America because they don't trust our banks, and they don't trust that this is a safe place to invest, because they had the lessons of from 2000 to 2008, all the unsavory, unsustainable lending that was done, while they're being told these were good investments.
All right, gentlemen, I really appreciate a healthy debate, but we are out of time. Thank you to the both of you for coming on the show and talking about this very important topic.
Thank you.
That was John Taylor, President and CEO of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, and Anthony Randazzo, Director of Economic Research at Reason Foundation.